Good morning. The background heater is still on, and I set it to turn off yep, okay, there it went. I was gonna say it was 1 minute late, but maybe my time is off. Okay, so we are getting ready to program a little bit more on BRcodeGG. That's the battle royal code bot game thing that's built. The engine is built with Rust. So the issue with it that we're seeing is that it's going to be slow, which is the reason why we're going to probably try to run it asynchronously behind the scenes, get like all the turns that are going into some kind of JSON object, and then render that later, so it's not a live game. But that does remind me that I'm going to have some kind of instantaneous feedback for people. And the only way I can think about that would be to release this and set this engine part as a separate code base where people can download that and then use it to build their bots and practice against a few basic different bots. So let's go ahead and get into it. So cd code mine BRcodeGG, and open up code here. All right, so in the last thing that we did was we got a grid sort of to display. So we can run that really quickly. Cargo run. We are using Rust, the language, and the extremely scientific reason of why I chose that language to run with is because I wanted to learn more Rust. Currently, we're switching to a more grid system as opposed to just allowing bots to choose pixels to move to. I think that will be a little bit easier to see what's going on, and also it'll be easier to do some collision detection because I won't have to check pixels if they're colliding, but rather if they're in the same XY coordinate system. So what I was thinking I wanted to work towards today is placing the bots down and just filling the circle with the color of the bot. So I could even leave this running up there like that. It's not taking very much CPU power. The fan doesn't turn on. It's not generating too much heat, which is, I mean, that's kind of it's kind of what we're expecting. It's not too much work to actually run these bots. It's just a lot of time as it loads things up into memory and loads them out of memory. And I don't know yet how to turn on like Node.js, for example, for the node bots. I don't know how to turn that on and then leave it running, but still be able to send it in standard input. But I do have access to people who might be able to tell us. So if necessary, we'll get my mentor, Dan, who, if you saw that video, it's a pretty awesome video where we went through the beginnings of this game and sort of what the plan was, and he gave some really good advice. So if I want to, currently the bot knows what the radius is, but I don't know if it's going to be the radius is correct now, because if we're going with more squares, we're going to want just a width and height for this bot, and maybe we can do like a radius later for size, but I'm thinking that means we should have just a width and a height, and when we instantiate the bot from the library, well, okay, so main passes in how many cells. Library then calculates how many cells that's going to be at the start, right? Yeah, the grid cell size. And that means that's going to be our width and height. That's what it's going to be. So when we create a new bot, we need to also, so width and height of the entire arena, but we also need to give it a width and height of the cell, so that when it goes to paint itself onto the screen, it goes into the appropriate box. And the question is, should it paint itself into the screen, or should that be a draw here, where the bot doesn't necessarily draw itself, which I'm skipping right now, and I could just say like, hey, where should you be? I'll draw you, bot. So it could just be an XY coordinates of where it is. But in order to that, it needs to track how big the grid cell size is. So let's pass this in and have the bot store this too. So grid cell size. So that means in bot, when we create a new one, so let's go to the tests. When we create a new bot, we're going to pass it in at 300, 300, and let's say a grid cell size of like 50. Oh, it's a tuple. Oh no, it's not a tuple, it's a point. It's just like a standard point. So we'll do that grid size, grid cell size equals point new, and we'll do like 50, 50. So a nice square here. And then here we'll pass this in, so grid cell size. I'm thinking that this could probably be a reference to it. We don't really need to affect it, so we can pass it a reference. That way we don't need to clone it all over the place. And then when we assert the radius, it shouldn't be radius anymore. It should now be a size. And the size should probably be this point. So this size should be equal to the grid cell size. Good morning, stacking. That's what I'm thinking right now, is if the bot is equal, is the bot size is a point that's similar to this, then we'll have the X and the Y, which is really like the width and the height. And that will allow us to sort of see, like, get the coordinates. So if we say like I'm at position 5 and 7. And that's going to be interesting, because if the bot location, I mean, it shouldn't be between, it should be between these ones. I almost feel that we should tell it where it is. Like, its location should also be told by the external bot. Like, you're just dropped in this location. You don't necessarily get to choose, maybe, or maybe it does, and right now it's choosing randomly. But it's a random pixel. And if I say you have to be on a grid, you have to be on this grid and you have to take up one of the slots, which means not necessarily an integer, but we want like a .0 all the way throughout. So do the calculations as an integer, then just convert to a float at the very end. And then that would be where your location is. And if we were actually at 50-50, so it would be something like 2 would be 100, 4 is 200, 6 would be 300. So there's only 6 by 6. So what's that? 24 potential slots available. If I wanted it to be at 0, 0, for example, Well, okay, so if I don't know if I want to tell it exactly where to go. Wandable, thank you for the host. I guess what I could say is that it should be less than 50, let's see, if it's 50-50, coordinates position, that we know it's 6. And if we start with 0, because we're, like most things in computers start with 0, then it'd be through 5, so less than 6. So bot location X should be greater than or equal to 0 or less than and equal to 6.0 for the cell position. And this is going to be the same with Y because this is a square. Everyone knows all the great languages have an index of 1. They do. They have an index of 1 and 2 and 3 and a 0. Let's see. The only 2 languages I can think of right off the top of my head that have an index. Oh no, 3 languages. So there's Lua. That's actually a really good language. There is AppleScript. So right off the bat, we're going right in with AppleScript, and what's the other one? Perl, I think, does that. Oh, MATLAB too. Oh, I never programmed in MATLAB, so well, news to me. So there we go. MATLAB and AppleScript, pretty much the same. No, that's. That's the best way to piss off a bunch of people. Okay, so I think this will be it. I think this will work. Okay, so to begin with, it's upset because we're taking 2 parameters, but 3 were supplied. We could actually run these tests if I save. So this is cargo test, but I won't even get to the test because it's not even taking those 3. So let's fix that really quickly. In bot new, this is not going to be size anymore. This is now going to be bot dot. Okay, so it's not going to be radius, it's going to be size. And this is going to be taking a point. So you are going to take in a grid cell size, which is a point. But it's not just that, it's a reference to a point. Radius doesn't really matter. We're just going to stuff you directly into size. So we're going to say size. And I guess, yeah, it's the size of the bot. So size is going to be grid cell size. And I guess you should be a reference, but I think if I do reference, I need to do lifetimes, don't I, in this bot? Oh, I'm sorry, it's not. I already have size. You. Size. Grid cell size. Oh, look how many errors we have. This is going to be great. Okay, so we have to, the trait bot sorted deserialize is not implemented for a reference point. I thought it is. It's not implemented for reference. It's for it, like for just a normal point, but for a reference to a point, it's not. So does that mean it would be better for us to make this and actually just clone it and use a whole bunch of... We could try that. Probably the best way to be figure out how to make it part of that dereference and reference. So if I do size like this, everything is fine here, but everything else is going to break because in draw, graphic circle self.radius, this is going to have to change. We're no longer going to be drawing a circle. We're now going to be drawing a rectangle. And we're going to be drawing it in the location. So this is going to have to change. In fact, I wonder, can I change this to rectangle? Oh, look, you ruined everything. Context. Draw mode is, we'll do a fill. And the rectangle is, what exactly you're looking for? Cannot find type rect in this scope. I guess this is going to be your okay, so we need rectangle. So graphics draw mode, I think it's graphics rect. Now it's going to say it doesn't know rect, right? Yeah, I'm not trying to do type description. Okay, so we need a new rect to pass in here, I think. So let rectangle equals rect new x, y, width, and height. Okay. Gareth, good morning, and Miguel, good morning. Okay, so the x and y, well, we have the location. I'm thinking that the location should be the top left. Now we don't have this, it's not correct right now with what we're setting, but I think we're gonna make it as, it's gonna be the top left of the grid, and we're gonna draw down and to the right. To fill in the grid. So x is still going to be self.location.x, y is going to be self.location.y. The width is now going to be self.size.x, and the height is going to be self.size.y. Does this, I think it's just like that. And we'll put in the rectangle here. Let's see if this makes the error go away. No, it made it. Oh, no semicolon. We are returning that potential. In fact, I don't need the question mark either. Okay, so that's one of these errors down. Coming down here, keep in arena. So when we keep into the arena, now what we need to do is determine, are we outside of the grid? So we know the width of the grid, and we know the coordinate system. You know, I kind of wonder, would it be best if I just had integers and the bot was able, like, just get current location was a method on it, and it would just pass in like an x and y coordinate of where it is, just ints, and then the main game library would actually draw that out for it. So we don't have to do we don't have to do quite as many calculations for that. Keep an arena might then not be on the bot, but on the game. Where maybe we pass the bot into keep in arena, and then that would update the bot with where it really is. I think that might be a way to do it. I don't know. If you all have any ideas, let me know. Because here we're gonna have to do some math, to sort of like figure out what coordinates it's allowed to be. I wonder, this might also be good to have. It all depends on how much of the universe you want the bots to be aware of. Yeah, they need to be aware of a bunch so they can make decisions like based upon where other bots are and how big the arena is, so that they can choose what to do, like intelligently choose. Right now, they just have their current location, the arena width, the arena height. Arena width and height might not be the best things to store here. Like these might not. This might not be helpful. It might be best to have the number of cells width and the number of cells height. That might be better, because we have the size of the bot. If you thought it would be just define the arena as a two-dimensional matrix, rows and columns. Yeah, that might be best. I think that might be arena rows and arena columns. I think that might be the way to go, because if we have arena rows and arena columns, then once again we're sort of on the, oh, are you outside the arena? Let's just take a look at the length. If you're at the length or greater, then you're out. So this size will be a significant change here, because all of these things touch this. So in our test, if they go outside, would you move them back or kill them? Right now I'm moving them back, but having it kill them might actually be a really interesting idea. Of like, here's the edge of the arena, and you moved outside, you're dead. That would actually be kind of interesting, especially if I ever implement like the standard battle royale gameplay element where I'm shrinking the arena down. I don't know if that's actually gameplay. I don't think that's really gameplay. That's just changing the world. But like change the world down where I make it smaller and smaller and smaller. Bots now have to be aware of that and like move in. And it could possibly push other bots off the screen. Interesting, yeah. That might be eventually like add in where there's an item that allows you to push bots as opposed to just butt up against them. All right, so I like the idea of killing the bots when they get off the screen. Our first step is to just draw them into one of the squares. And so the question is, where does the draw function happen? Like, who actually draws it? Is it the bot that draws it? Because right now I have this draw function right here, and it's going to draw the rectangle. I don't really have a problem with that, saying like, here, I am here, I draw myself. Or if the main library that's just telling the bots is like, hey bot, where are you? And I'll draw you to the screen. That could also be a thing that we do. Okay, so more changes, more refactors. We're gonna have a lot of broken tests and everything else, but that's what refactors are for, right? So we have our size, width and height. I kind of feel like I would want, not like this size is not necessarily helpful. I think more of just bot width which is going to be an F32 and bot height is an F32. The reason why everything needs to be an F32 is because the game engine kind of requires everything to be an F32, which sometimes is a little bit annoying, but also I completely understand that too. Yeah, sumo bots would be interesting. There could be different modes of gameplay where it's like, okay, you're dropped in and this is a sumo match, no bullets, just see who's the last one alive, by ramming each other, and everybody automatically gets the ram like item. Those are all clearly far future things, but would be really kind of fun to implement once we got the core game working. Would it be worth defining a size struct as a pair of F32s, similar to point, but with width and height labels? Yeah, it might be. So I could do either bot width and that, or what I had previously was just a point, but I could also do a size. I don't think I could do. Can I do an anonymous struct in a struct where I do something like width is an F32 and height is an F32? I don't remember if I can do that. Yeah, no, so I can't do that. I would potentially have to do, I mean, that's kind of what a point is. A point is just an X and Y. But I want to give it a better label. If your structs aren't going to use decimals, I would stick with the most restrictive types and then type convert when interact. That might be a good idea. That way I could draw everything with integers, and then the math wouldn't have any weird off by like a couple points errors, which like we'll have decimal drift if we stay with F32. I think you're right in that one. So size, let's try doing this with eyes. Yeah, I agree, Gareth, not using points. I don't know if I want to create like a completely new struct for the size, but maybe I should just do like the size is a new struct, and we'll put it outside here, and then we'll grab it in. Because I have a point, I could add a size and do something like the size is a type, width and height. So it's just going to be a size. I could just do this. And maybe the grid should be a structure. Maybe sort of like the game grid itself. So looking back at library, we're ordering like the grid cell size, and we're doing the math like separately here inside of the main state. But if I have a completely different state that is the grid, then that could be defined as like width and height for that grid. And that will, I guess, like not necessarily width and height, but like the number of cells per width, the number of cells height. It can be in charge of drawing things, and it can be in charge of like placing the bots. So the bot will tell it, or rather this main library will say, hey, grid, draw this bot, and hand it a reference to the bot. The bot will then, like, it will ask the bot, what's your location? It'll give an integer, it will count X and Y, and then fill in that square. I think I like that. I think I like that a lot more. So to that end, what I want to do is, before I go around moving the bots, I think I want to undo all these changes until we're back to we've redone the test. In fact, I pushed this up last time. I think I'm just going to go into here and bot and revert you. Discard those changes. I don't need them right now. And then, so bot, we're not going to change you, so don't save. In the library, let's now draw everything out with a grid. So we're going to have a grid structure. And sort of like to go on a point where we have is we're calculating like the grid cell size here. And I think we don't want to do that. Yeah, this is just saying, okay, what we want to do. Also, when we run this, let's make sure that there's only one bot that we're creating. That way it won't just take forever to run. How do I interpret the JavaScript for the bots? If we take a look in bot.rs, I am currently in update. Where is it? In run bot. So I'm actually running an external command. And then just running node testbot.js and then passing it into standard input, like actual input for it. So I'm pretty sure there's a better way to do this, but I'm trying to keep it as separated out so that when I do find a better way to do it, it will take less time. Did you hear, does that actually get caught by the microphone? Oh, I guess that means my beard is dry. Okay, but also it's going to mean that I'll have some interesting security things that I can do with that, but those will slow down the game. But again, I'm not planning for this game to be as like immediate. Oh wow, okay, well this microphone keeps on surprising me with how sensitive it is. All right, so grid cell size point. We kind of aren't going to need to test that we have a grid cell size on here. That's going to be a completely another structure. So here, main state grid cell size. We're not going to test this. Main state width, height, the bots. Grid cell size. We don't need to do that's the like what the result was going to be, and here we're creating a main state and saying like we want 25 cells. You also hear that, yeah, that would be the rest of the family waking up after I do. Okay, so if we have you, it's not going to change anything with the test because we're just testing less now. We're going to want to create a grid system, like a grid. Maybe I'll just call it grid, game grid. So in source, no, not new folder, new file. We'll call this grid.rs. And all right, so let's begin at the begin. So we'll do our config. Test, begin with test, name. So this is going to be grid new, and so we'll just begin. So let grid equals grid new, and we'll pass it probably the width and the height. the width, the height, and the number of cells. That's really all we care about. Are we doing a point for the width and height? Doesn't look like it. We have width and height separately. So we'll give it, let's do, I can call it like the board width and just sort of stay with the idea that this is kind of like a board game that's being played with turns. So let board width equals, and these we know are floats. So I should pass them in as floats. So board width is going to be, let's say, maybe like we'll do 100 .0, and let board height equals 100.0, and the number of cells. So let cells, this cell width, like how many cells in a width. So cells on the x-axis. What did I call it in the main? Grid cells. Oh, this is number of cells, the x and the y. So I guess like cell count is gonna be, I don't know, we'll do 10 to make the math really easy. And this will be an integer. Okay, so we'll pass in these things. So board width, board height, and the cell count. This will now create itself with the appropriate math. And okay, so we should now be able to assert that the grid, do we need board width? We probably don't care about board width anymore once we create all the cells, right? We're not going to be changing that. We're just going to say once the game starts, this is the size of the grid. The cell count is, okay, so we want it, in this one it's going to be every 10 pixels or so. So how would I want to test this? I guess like there should be probably a vector of the cells, of like the start, maybe like a vector of the points. So a vector of start positions of the top left of each grid, and then the same thing on the way down, a vector of start positions on the bottom. So if I give it an x and y coordinate, it just looks up the appropriate one. So like x this way, x that way, would that really be two vectors? I guess like one for, would it be one vector with lots of different parts in it? Let me draw this out. This is, if I have like a vector of this, and then I would have my points. This would be the x, right? And I can't really do just like that. So this would itself need to be an array or a vector. And then I could do another one for the next x. So I'm thinking this might be the best way to store this. Well, it's probably not the best way. There probably is a better way of doing this, but this is the first thing that comes to my mind, which is we have a vector, and this is going to be the y's are going to be this next vector. So 0, 0, 0 would be this one right here. So these would be points. So with like 0 and 0, 0 and 1, and this would be essentially 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 0 and 2, just to make sure they all line up. So this will be 0 over and 1 down. And this is incorrect. This would be 1 and 0, 2 and 0, because the x comes first, and this is the along the x axis. What do you all think about this? This would allow us to create the grid and just basically have the coordinate system work. And as long as it's well, we can convert them to U sizes, or we could just keep them in U sizes the entire time. Okay, so if we do this, sounds workable. Vec point is quite common. All right, so then this is what we're gonna do. So if we do this, this is gonna be 10, right? Good morning, 0101 Pollux. This is going to be 10. Yes. If I want to change this to be a little bit more workable, if I do 30 and 30, now I can manually create what this grid is going to look like and actually then test that. So cell count, we want 10 of them. Is that cell count 10 divided by 3 is 3 of them? No, that's, I think I have it wrong with this math already here. This is almost like if I want 10 of them, I divide 10 by 3 and I get every 3 pixels. If you have the width and height, what is the point of cell count? I guess like the question was, do I want a different number of cells each time? I think that's where I was thinking with it, but yeah, I'm not sure that that's the best idea. I mean, I could just say it's, regardless what the size is, it's always going to be this. Sounds like a bit of rendering and game logic. Yeah, it might. I think it is. I guess with the grid, what I could say is you are. This doesn't really care. We're just going to tell it how many X and how many Y we want to cross, doesn't it? If you want to be able to zoom, this doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, I keep on forgetting about cameras and zooms. So if I don't care about the board width at all, like, or rather, this is going to be the number of cells X. So this is going to be essentially cell count X. Like how many do I want on the X-axis? And this won't be, let's say we do like a 3 by 3. Cell count Y. This would be a 3 by 3 there. We don't need U anymore. We now we'll just give it a grid of do cell count X, cell count Y, and now we assert that the grid is going to look something like this. You just do grid columns and rows. Okay, yeah, columns and rows. That's better. Yeah, and we can derive everything else. So we'll do columns and rows. So if we do an initial columns and rows, then we expect, okay, the actual grid dot, is it gonna be grid dot grid? The grid is just an abstract concept. Yeah, I think you're right with that. Yeah, I just want this to be a simple, like, almost spreadsheet. Like, it shouldn't matter where it gets drawn, so the library will draw it out and then figure that out. This will just hold where the bots are. I think that'll be it. But not like actually the coordinates of the bot, like not the pixel coordinates of the bots. It'll only hold everything, just the other things. So if I do assert equal grid, we want this entire structure here. So let's do the actual grid. So let rendered, like not rendered grid, because that for rendering purposes you could do some magic and give the cells a real width and height, which probably is also what Danny meant. Yeah, so I haven't really thought, Danny, as sort of you're thinking about what I'm going to store in each cell, but like some ideas are coming up. I'm probably not going to get that far because I'm still wrapping my mind and sort of growing this idea of like how I want this to be returned. Like, what do I want stored inside of the actual data structure? And it's like initially it's pretty much going to be this thing, and I'm trying to think of what I want to call that. I called this like the grid. I guess I could call this like the game grid, and the grid, if I set this equal to, and then we just create these as points right here. So I'm doing 3 by 3, so I can really easily do a what is it, a vec. That's going to be across there. We're going to have to do this three times. So then the first X is going to be another vec. And then this is going to be the first, so Y is 0 and all the way through. Oh man, I love that. Natural organic. That's what we do. Free range games right here. The bots are going to be all free range. And then each of these will be points. So point new, and we'll, oh, these are F32s. So at this point, I kind of want to put generics on the points, don't I? So that I could have integer points. That would be really nice to not have F32s, but in reality just do like 0, and 0 like that. Which you're gonna, I was gonna say, you're gonna yell at me? Oh, that's because I haven't brought in point yet. So if I use, hey, how do you get down there? You use point. Does metal count as vegetarian? Maybe not to a bot. So if I do that, I'm still surprised this isn't RLS. Why aren't you yelling at me? This is not a float. Well, I could go by until the tests are actually yelling at me, so I could build these out. I think we're gonna want generics to make this so that it's the points are taken integers or use, and also what is it, F32s. So then we can do point new. This is going to be, so 1 and 0, and point new, this is going to be 2 and 0. And so that's the first row, no, the first set of columns in the first row. Okay, so at this point I should be able to just copy this entire thing, and now this one is going to be exactly the same, but with these zeros upgraded to ones. And then the third one is, so the X still goes on like 0, 1, 2. These go on to 2s. All right, I think we have this. This should be what the grid looks like. We'll semicolon U, and then we'll assert that the grid, that the game grid dot grid is equal to the grid, and that's it. Okay, so this shouldn't be too terribly hard to implement. We're gonna have some work with points to do. I think what I need to do is come into main and mod, no, not mod, into lib and mod game grid. So mod grid, I think I'm gonna call this game grid. So rename it here. So file not found, game underscore grid. You should find it now. You're there. Okay, do I need to reset? All right, it's thinking as RLS moves forward. I do want to try out Sea Lion and see if that's a little bit better. It's going to be a combination if it's faster and better, but also if I feel that I can use it. A grid of points probably isn't all that useful. Right now, yeah, I need like a data structure to put in. I need a cell data structure, don't I? So inside of here, each of these would be a cell, wouldn't it be? And then the cell is going to hold some kind of data in it, like the location of a bot. So it would be, yeah, okay. So it needs to be a cell. But what would a cell hold? We're getting too deep into it now. So the grid would now be a cell, and the cell would have a location. No, not a location. Not the location. The location on the grid is location. I think this is really, yeah, the grid location. Maybe not like actually location here. So we're going to have a vector of vectors. Each of those will be the cell. And then inside of that, has the X and Y of like which cell it is. Starting to sound like that OP class you had to turn real life objects into data structures. Yeah, it kind of is. This is the part that I always have trouble wrapping my head around because I need to like draw it out a lot. So if we have like, they're not just this. If I think about like in objects, we're going to have a location, which is going to be essentially a 0 and 0. But also we might have something like bot ID, for example, and have that be like, I don't know, 5. 5 is here. But maybe not even bot ID, but like what is in the bot. So like content is something else. Might help to imagine you are a bot receiving this grid. How would you interact with it, and what would you want to know? Right. So if I'm thinking of like a physical grid, like a board game grid, then I'm right here. I want to move here, and so you take your piece, you remove it from that grid, and you put it into the next grid. Or rather, in this case, it's probably going to be, I am right here, grid, I want, like, move me over here, and the grid checks, are you allowed to move there? And if you are, then it moves you there. So I think that's how it could work. So we'll have maybe coordinates would be better. So coordinates would be the 0 and 0. So this would essentially be a point and an integer point. Then we'll have the content of like what is on this. So like, does it have a bot or something else? So this is probably going to be some kind of enum, because it can have one of the following things. Let's make sure it can only be one of those. And everything else would be just empty. So I guess the way I'm thinking of it is it could be type. Like I don't know if it would be game type piece. Like if I'm going with a board piece, and be a bot, which would then be like a reference to an actual bot. I don't know, something maybe like that. I am running out of time, so this is perfect to let it sort of percolate in my brain and then figure that out. So I am going to leave this here, so that way I can remember it next time. And also I'm going to go ahead and yeah, it's finally now telling me about all these problems that I have. Let's go ahead and update this. We'll do work in progress. Creating game grid structure. So I will send that on up, and let's go grab that code, and I'll put it into the chat. Keep on forgetting there's no landing page now. It's just an empty blank page when I open up a new tab in Firefox. Okay, so BRcode, and we'll come on here and paste that in. All right. Yes, I'll see you at lunch today, Danny. I'll be looking forward to it. We can maybe chat about Rust a little bit and about the other things that I'm doing. And besides that, I don't really think I have anything, so I'm going to switch to the ending scene. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. I believe that I can stream tomorrow morning, but I'm not completely sure. I will tweet out tonight if I am unable to stream tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be a standard I keep on forgetting to hit transition. A standard stream of like 6:30 a.m. In the morning, even though that schedule is wrong. So with that being said, I hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.